Okay, hi Dr. Holden and whoever else is watching this. This is my reflection for my 6th grade lesson, and I know we're supposed to try and keep it under 10 minutes, so I'm basically going to do 3 things. I have notes, sorry, so I might look down some. I'm going to talk about why I felt like what I did was problem solving. I'm going to talk about the 3 main things you wanted us to reflect on, and then I'm going to reflect on the actual keep. So, first off, just to kind of talk about, I know that it was Jeopardy, and so when you first see it, one might think that's just a game, and what way is that problem solving? It was kind of hard because Allison Kitchen, this was kind of the only time that she could let me come in, and so obviously I wanted to take advantage of that. And she wanted me to do a review with the kids, but rather than just doing like a boring, like, let's do these problems review, I wanted to make it more fun. So that's why I created the game. But the reason I feel like it was problem solving was because I wasn't giving them the answers. They were still using their knowledge. And granted, they already had some of that background knowledge at this point, but I still felt like it was good for them because they had to really see what they knew. And they could still talk to their peers, which was a big key in it being problem solving. And so, yeah, I guess in short, that's just kind of why I felt that was problem solving. Could it have been more geared towards problem solving? Yeah. And if I had been teaching a new concept to them, I almost think it would have been a little easier to use problem solving. But I did try and throw in some tougher questions that they really had to think on and discuss with their peers. In fact, I don't know if it was in the videos or not, but the one about which is faster, the giraffe or the tiger, that one they talked a lot about with their peers and wound up coming up with answers, which was good. So they did use problem solving. So I just wanted to cover that a little bit. Okay, how did I integrate science is one of the first things I looked at. And basically, the math that I did aligned with the 6th grade science standard MS-LS4-6. And it's basically with an emphasis on using proportional reasoning, and probability statements to support expectations. So basically what the kids are doing in the science standard is they're having to prove something, whatever that standard relates to, but they have to use proportional reasoning and proportions and stuff like that. So basically the math that we were doing for this review is the math that they would use to fulfill this standard to support their claim. So I felt like that was a really good science tie-in. Now, I mean, you could also look at the fact that, comparing rates of speeds of animals, that could in some ways be related to science, but as far as connecting to an actual standard, I felt like that was what connected most to the standard itself. Okay, as far as enhancing the instruction with technology, I didn't use a math application because, well, I didn't use a math app, I guess I should say, on like an iPad, because she only had one iPad and I wanted to be able to do a review with the whole class. I did use the iPad and I did use technology through the Jeopardy game itself. And the iPad was actually really nice because it allowed me to be able to walk around the room with the kids and I could help them rather than just having to stand at the front and supervise from there. So that was really nice. And so I think technology did enhance the lesson because, if we hadn't had Jeopardy, I could have done something on the board and I could have read questions off. But the fact that I had the technology, one, helped kids who learn visually because they could read the question as well as have it read to them. And it helped them because then they got to see the answer pop up also. So I just think that there were a lot of advantages to using what I used. And then as far as motivating the students, I think it was kind of twofold. First off, the game in general was motivating. I was always motivated by games in grade school, and I assume that's pretty universal. They were all excited when I said we were playing a game. But then I also did candy, and I told them that only the winners got it, but I wound up giving it to everybody. If I were the actual classroom teacher, I probably wouldn't have done that because then they would come to expect, well, we're all going to get candy, so why try? So I wouldn't do that in the classroom all the time, but because I was just there once, I wanted to make sure they all got something. And then the other thing that I did that I felt was really effective and motivating was they all had to do every problem because I knew we could run into the issue potentially of them only doing the problems that their team picked. So to prevent that, I told them that even if it wasn't their team's turn to pick, they all should solve it. And then once the team had given their answer, I would draw a stick with a person's name, and if I called your name and you could show me your work and tell me whether you agreed or disagreed with the team, then you would get 100 bonus points for your team. So I felt like that was an advantage because it made sure that all of the kids were still doing the problems. And I just felt like it was a really good idea. And Allison even commented that she thought it was a good idea as well, because I think when you do a game like Jeopardy, you just have to make sure that you have a motivating factor for all the students, rather than, well, if this team misses it, I'll just wait it out 5 more rounds until it's my turn. So I felt like that was a good motivating factor as well. Okay, as far as the keep, I'm going to have to look at my notes more for this one, sorry. I'm not familiar with the keep, so this was kind of new to me. But construct 1 was learner and learning, and the first one was learner development. And I gave extra time for different learning levels, which I felt was an adjustment. And I did read the questions aloud. There was actually a girl in the back who couldn't read them on the board, so I made sure to read them for her. And then the one thing that I think I could have improved was that the questions were the same for all the students. So that wasn't really differentiated at all. The reason I did it that way is because they were all going to take the same test, but there were definitely students that struggled more, so I could have adjusted that more. I didn't get to know all of the students. That's another thing under this construct. I've only been in that room twice, and I honestly probably won't be in there the rest of the year. So it was hard to build a rapport with students in 2 45-minute class periods. But I was friendly, I felt, and I made them feel welcome. And then the learning environment, I did collaborate with the students as they worked, which you can kind of see in the video. I walked around and talked to them. And as far as academically challenging, I think it kind of was, they were able to make it more challenging for themselves because the questions were leveled. So it's kind of up to the students how challenging they wanted to go. And I noticed that some of the students that were lower level, they did go ahead and pick the 100, 200 point questions. And that was actually really good for their level. And then the students who were more advanced would pick the 500, and that was about the same level for them as the 1 and 200 questions were for the students that were on the lower level. So I think in that way it was differentiated, but I didn't control it as much as I probably should have. Construct 2 is content knowledge. Mine was pretty good, I felt. Allison actually gave me a copy of the test she was going to give, so I looked over all of that, and I made sure that I knew that way if they asked questions. So I was aware of what I was doing. I wasn't able to explain to some kids who struggled as much because of the short time. That was one thing that I kind of regret. Sorry, let's see here. Okay, so as far as innovative applications of content knowledge, there was not much critical thinking involved. And that was the one thing that I regret. If they were struggling with the information, then there was critical thinking involved because they didn't already understand it. But if they understood it, there weren't that many questions that were really challenging. Like I said, like the 500-point ones were probably more challenging, but aside from that, they weren't challenged every single question, and so that was, again, a mistake on my part. Construct 3 is instructional practice. So I did align with standards, and I met students' needs as well as I could. Like I said, I didn't know a lot about these students going in. The girl who struggled reading, I picked that up right away. And I also figured out which tables had lower level learners, so I gravitated more towards them and helped them talk it out amongst themselves. Because even with problem-based learning, they needed guidance and even talking to each other. So I did do that. And then as far as assessment, there wasn't one for the most part. It was really just, I provided opportunities for them to demonstrate their learning and that they use their whiteboards, but I didn't do a formal assessment. The assessment comes the next day when they took the test. And then as far as instructional strategies, I felt like I engaged them. I didn't challenge them a ton at times like I talked about, but again, that wasn't necessarily the purpose. The purpose was for them to review what they already hopefully knew. And then the last construct is professional responsibility. And I felt like I really focused in on collaboration and leadership here. And I felt like I had good leadership in the classroom. And I felt like I collaborated with Allison well. I think as I became more comfortable with the kids, that would just improve as it went. So overall, for my first lesson with middle school students, I felt like this went pretty well. I would definitely like to get in, though, and do another one that's not just a review. So hopefully I have time to get that in before the semester's up.